The following is a production of JTZ Media. What is going on, y'all? Welcome to episode 19 of the Half Price Concessions podcast. On this podcast, we're typically talking racing, whether it's local racing, national racing, dirt, asphalt, NASCAR, sprint cars, IndyCar, Formula One. We're talking usually about the product on the track. But how do you see it? If you're not at the track, streaming services are everywhere. One of the most famous ones that probably more people around the world use is DirtVision, the official streaming service of both the World of Outlaws NOS Energy Drink Sprint Car Series, as well as the World of Outlaws Morton Buildings late models, plus all the other racing entities owned by World Racing Group. Rob Blount, an employee of DirtVision, takes us behind the curtain as we look behind and see how exactly they get the greatest show on dirt to streaming services and laptops and cell phones and everywhere that people watch dirt racing. So sit back and relax. Episode 19 of the Half Price Concessions podcast with Rob Blount of DirtVision and the 5 Minute Clock podcast, which we will talk about in this episode as well, is coming up in just a few moments. Hey guys, have you heard about Anchor? Well, you should. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. First and foremost, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your cell phone or your computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you. It takes all the work out of it. Your podcast can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Just download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. This episode of the Half Price Concessions podcast is brought to you in part by our friends at Performance Center Racing Warehouse. Located in Statesville, North Carolina, Performance Center Racing Warehouse provides racers with just about everything you need to go asphalt late model racing, including being the home of the PRW chassis. From a full-blown fabrication shop to services that can help you get your race car re-clipped if you've been in the wall one too many times or you just need to get your racing program straightened out. Give Roger Johnson and the folks at Performance Center Racing Warehouse the chance to earn your racing business by calling them today at 704-838-1400 and visit them online at performancecenter.com. That's PERFORMANCENTER.com. Here on the Half Price Concessions podcast, and Rob Blount from DirtVision.com and also the 5 Minute Clock podcast. I would say joins us, but we joined you. We come to you down here at the DirtVision studios. But it's good to talk to you, brother. Good to see you again. I don't think I've seen you since you made the switch because you used to be over at Speed 51. I don't think I've laid eyes on you since then. Nothing.
I mean, that's good for you.
Yeah.
Nothing. You don't want to lay eyes on me too many times. I even feel bad for my own girlfriend sometimes too. So
my wife has my sympathy, so we'll call it even. But man, it is kind of cool to just be here. I've been a DirtVision fan and whatnot for quite a while, so to actually be here and see some of the setup and stuff, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. You finally get to peer behind the curtain a little bit. But you guys are. This is probably, I'd probably say it has to be the calmest time of the year-ish, because I'm sure after February and March hits, it probably just gets crazy around here where you got stuff almost daily with the way the sprint car schedule is and all the other things y'all do. Is this kind of a quiet-ish time for y'all?
Believe it or not, no, surprisingly. So I guess before I joined DirtVision about a year ago now, January would have been a very quiet time. But this year, we've added so much content between the new late model series, the Dryden Extreme Dirt Car Series that's got about 2 events a month since it debuted at the end of November. Between that and all of the content that we've been showing from Australia with the United Sprint Car Series and at Perth Motorplex, we've had racing pretty much every weekend. And then the World of Outlaws Morton Buildings late models just started up last weekend at Vado Speedway Park in New Mexico. So that was earlier for them instead of starting at Screven like usual, right before they would go to Volusia. So it's, believe it or not, it's been quite busy in January, but of course, yeah, it is going to get crazier as we head down to Dirt Car Nationals at the start of next month. So it's getting ready to ramp up. But right now we're in a little lull period because all the attention out inside this building with all the racers that we've just got that work here, turning their attention to Chili Bowl. We obviously don't do that, but so many people focus on Chili Bowl that it's kind of a bit of a quiet time for us.
I'm sure it's a pretty good crossover. A lot of people that's kind of from the sprint car world and whatnot make that crossover to the midget stuff. But before we get too deep into DirtVision, tell us a little bit about what you do here. How long have you been here, and what exactly is kind of your title?
My title is Live Broadcast Specialist, and I think I'm now about 50 weeks into my tenure here. My full 1 year is, I think, 2 weeks from now. I started literally, I think, the Tuesday after Chili Bowl a year ago. So I'm just about hitting that year mark. And yeah, Live Broadcast Specialist, which is a really fancy way of saying that I babysit all the racing that you see go on DirtVision, pretty much.
So you're not on site. You're typically back here at the DirtVision studios in Concord.
Correct. That would be why you and I never saw each other at all last year, because I know you, and by the way, I was listening to you through the speakers here. You did a great job covering the Sika late models at the Patriot Nationals last year.
I'm glad you thought so, because I caught so much grief from people that I misidentified one guy and I caught so much hell, and I was just like, man, come on, let a guy make one mistake.
Yeah, mistakes happen. No, you did great, and you normally do, because I used to get to hear you all the time when you were at Ace Speedway, and I was going up there like 6 or 7 times.
You were up there a lot. You brought the rain every time you came.
I
Thanks
did.
a lot.
That was ridiculous. I know. But yeah, so I don't get to go to the racetrack that frequently. I think I did maybe 7 shows last year, and that was because my role kind of got expanded a little bit beyond just the live broadcast specialist. I also was granted the privilege of being the pit reporter for the CBS shows that we did. So I think we did 6 weekends of that, 2 shows each weekend. So I think I went to about 6 or 7 races last year, but I mean, when you consider the fact that the late models had something like 45 and the sprint cars had 72, that's a very small number. So my travel went down a lot last year, which honestly was kind of appreciated when you're doing like 112 shows the year prior to like 8, so that wasn't bad.
Makes it a little easier on the home life, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. There's a bit more time to do things and spend more time with my girlfriend, Catherine. I know she appreciated that. And honestly, I appreciated that too, so it was nice. So
DirtVision, in a nutshell, is the broadcast arm of World Racing Group that sanctions a lot of national series, the sprint car, World of Outlaw sprint cars, the late models. And I think a lot of people, when they think of World of Outlaws, they think of just those 2. But in reality, the kind of umbrella that World Racing Group has is a lot broader than that. So just real quick to set the table, what are kind of some of those other series that maybe people wouldn't think about maybe for DirtVision, just thinking that you're only World of Outlaws?
It's very far-reaching. It was farther reaching than even I realized before I joined a year ago. I mean, in addition to the World of Outlaws late models and the World of Outlaws non-energy drink sprint cars, you've got dirt car. So you've got dirt car UMP modifieds in the Midwest. You've got pro stocks in the Northeast. Your sportsman modifieds, 358 modifieds in the Northeast. They also are the sanctioning body behind the Super Dirt Car Series in the Northeast. And now, like I said, the new series, the Dryden Extreme Dirt Car Series late models, that's basically a winter series down here. So there's a ton of racing under the World Racing Group banner that I don't think people realize because of the different names.
Yeah.
Maybe don't realize that Dirt Car is owned by World Racing Group, and Dirt Car just covers so much. So there is a lot, and there's even a lot beyond what we end up showing on DirtVision too, because we've got the 2 main series, the sprint cars and the late models. We've done the Dryden Extreme series, and
You guys do the Hell Tour too, right?
We do Summer Nationals. Yep. That'll be. So that's actually kind of new.
Yeah.
Because it's been on DirtVision last year, but it was kind of produced through our partnership with Dirt on Dirt, and now we've taken over the entirety of that. So that's going to be a lot of work and a lot of hours, of course, but that'll be fun too because, I mean, the Hell Tour is some great racing in the summertime.
Yeah, but where else are you going to get like 28 races in 34 days?
Yeah,
if it doesn't rain, like
exactly.
The rain gets them.
The rain was really bad last year. I think it cut out something like 3/4 of the shows for the first 3 weeks, which was a shame. It's just a shame more for the racers because they try so hard to follow that tour, and then just for the rain to kill everything the way it did in the beginning. But they ended up getting their racing in, and it's always a fun time.
I think one of the things that surprises people, if it's someone who has never watched a DirtVision broadcast, when I say that it's a streaming service, I think they come in with a certain expectation, but then when they actually watch, and they're like, "Oh man, there's commercials, there's multiple camera angles, there's instant replay. You're getting the audio from Dirt Car World Racing Group has a really good set of announcers. I'm a big Johnny Gibson and Rick Eshelman fan, but the other ones too. Like it's a full-fledged broadcast. It's not like some guy on the top row of the grandstands with his cell phone going Facebook Live. It's a full-fledged production. It's pretty cool to see how technology has kind of come to that point, because 20-something years ago, if you didn't have like a TV contract with like TNN or something like that, none of this would have, I think, really been thought of. It's amazing kind of how far it's come, where you don't have to be affiliated with a national network or something like that. You guys are able to do this and have a high production quality that you do.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's certainly what we're striving for. I mean, we've got an awesome team of people here that don't travel that much like myself, and then the people that are at the racetrack that are putting in really long days and long weeks and long months. I mean, there are times when we get into the meat of the season that they're not coming home for like 3 or 4 months, and they're just solidly on the road following the series and putting on races on the internet for people to watch. But it's a really cool time if you're a race fan, because I know we all, I'm sure you feel the same way as I do and so many others do. We all miss Speed Channel, right?
Yeah.
But
there's a big hole that got left behind when that kind of got bought out by Fox and got turned into FS1.
Right. And we all miss that and miss all the motorsports that was on TV. But now if you're a dedicated racing fan and you know where to look, I think it's safe to say there's more racing available at your fingertips now than there's probably ever been. Yeah. And that's not even just with us, but with everyone else that's covering everything, whether it's Speed Shift covering USAC, Speed 51 covering everything that they cover on pavement, and now even karting too. There's so much racing out there that's available to be watched. If you can have the expendable budget to watch all of it, it's a great time to be a race fan. And
then the way technology is now, you don't have to be at the house. I can be. A lot of the times, here's what would happen. I would go to another race, and I would plug in and put a headphone in and listen to the sprint cars, like on the audio only on the DirtVision, or if there was like a lull at the track I was at, or if I was at a family function or an in-law function and
or
things like that.
Or if I came to East Speedway and brought the rain.
Something like that. Like I could look on my phone, and then when I got back to the house, I could throw my phone up on the screen and watch it. So technology might be the devil. That's what Mama said. But but in our case, I mean, it's amazing how much you can get your hands on. And I mean, you ain't even got to have, it might be part of the cord cutting thing now you could just do the subscription thing, and there's so many options. But I know it doesn't magically get to the TV screen or your cell phone for DirtVision. So on the bare bones level, how do you guys what's kind of like the start? Does DirtVision staff travel with the officials? Do they ride independently? Do they kind of get there at the same time? What are kind of some of those things?
So I'll explain this through the sprint car side and just focus on that one to be the easiest at right this second. So we have our DirtVision producer on the sprint car side. His name is Hank Silver. He's a 21-year-old kid from North Carolina, and honestly, the kid's a genius. He's so smart at what he does, and he travels with the series in the DirtVision truck and trailer, along with a couple officials who also go to every race and travel with him in the series. So he's not driving alone however many hours.
He's not all by himself.
Yeah, exactly. But when he gets to the racetrack, it basically falls on him to do the cable runs and set up what we call our POV shots. Those are basically the speed shots that you see mounted to the fence or the flag stand or the wall. Those are unmanned cameras. He'll set up those. Most of our shows are a single camera shoot, up like man camera. We'll put that either on the roof or basically as high as we can get it to get the best vantage point. So he runs that cable. All of these cables come back to the trailer, and then, of course, the audio feed so that we can hear the great Johnny Gibson's 4-wide call and his race call. That gets run back down to the trailer. And then we have this really cool device that basically takes a bunch of cell cards, like your jetpacks or whatever. It has those all tied together and gives us the best signal to send our broadcast feed back to here in Concord, where myself or whoever is in here that night will basically put more graphics on it to make it look neater and look not just like it's a camera in the grandstands or something. It'll make it look more polished, and we'll finalize the mix for audio between your nat sound of hearing those awesome 900 horsepower sprint cars and late models, mixing that with Johnny and Rick Eshelman's calls and making that sound the best it can possibly sound. And then from there, we finally put it to our video hosting site, and then that gets put on DirtVision. So all told, if you the viewer, if your internet speed is as good as it can possibly be, you're only about 55 seconds behind live. Now that sounds very low, but at the same time, when you're thinking about it, some of these track sprint cars are running 9-10 second laps. Yeah, it's a little bit behind, but it's as close to live as really you're going to possibly get. So.
Yeah, I was about to say, I've noticed that sometimes where like I've looked on the race monitor for timing and scoring, and I've noticed like a little bit of the dip, but I'm like, you know what? I don't care. Yeah. Close enough.
Race monitor is fully 100% live. That's the closest you're going to get. But and that's the cool thing too is we've figured out a way to get our scoring ticker that we have on the broadcast to be fully matched up with what you're seeing as it's happening on the broadcast, not with race monitor live. So it's not like our scoring is somehow a couple laps ahead of what you're actually seeing. It's all happening in regular time and looking the way it would look if you were watching a network broadcast.
I will say y'all's ticker is my favorite because it gives me as a fan what I want. The top three it seems like the top three is always displayed, and then everybody else kind of scrolls through. Like that's something I like. So how do you coordinate the replays though? Because I know the announcer does he kind of have a monitor where he's looking and he can see what you're doing, or is it off an earpiece?
About a quarter of the way through the year, we finally got a monitor into the tower for Johnny at every show, so that this way he could look at the replay that we're showing at the same time as the viewers are seeing it, and he can dissect what happened and, hey, maybe I got that call wrong and when I saw it live, because that happens. These cars are going fast. Yeah. Now he can see exactly what happened, or if he didn't see it, now he knows what happened and is seeing it for the first time, just like the viewers are at home if our cameras were in a good spot to catch it. And that's the hardest part of replays, is the fact that at a lot of these shows, like I said, we only have one man camera and a couple static cameras placed around the racetrack, and sometimes things don't happen within the lens. But if they do, Hank's great at finding it and showing it pretty quickly. So the replay that you're seeing on the broadcast, that's coming from the trailer trackside to us here and then going to you guys at home. The social media replays that you would see on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, that's coming from here in the studio. That's
another thing that you guys do really good, is that if I wanted to, usually the best way I get people exposed to DirtVision is show them one of the A-main kind of highlight packages you guys do, and y'all are awesome at it on the late models, on the sprint cars, on about anything, where you have like the feature where you have like about 5 minutes or so worth of highlights, and then you also have kind of like the DirtVision replays. How long do those take to kind of make? I'm sure that's kind of a little more on your end because you're back here in the studio.
Yeah, definitely. That is, so we
have a couple what we call hyperdecks set up. It's basically just recording decks going onto SD cards, just like you would use in basically any sort of camera or whatever. We take that, we record onto those, and dump it onto an external hard drive, and immediately get to editing pretty much right after the race ends. If it's the last race of the night, we will end the broadcast and then start editing. If not, usually there's a couple support divisions after, and while they're going, we'll be editing right away. And it usually, I mean, the nice thing about sprint car and late model racing is, for the most part, your longest race, you're looking at 50 laps.
Yeah,
so it's pretty quick to get through it, right?
It's not like you're editing the Daytona 500.
Right. That'll take a little bit longer, exactly. So 25 to 50 lap races, I mean, unless there's a ton of cautions that you're just trying to weed your way through, it's usually pretty quick to get through, and we're just trying to find, those moments that during the race made you go, wow, that was awesome. Or also just telling the story, a condensed version of the story of the top three. How did they get there?
Yeah.
And then from there, it's just export, upload to YouTube, and straight to social media from there. And it's not that long of a process, and we're fortunate in that because there are some people who just, maybe they were out that night and just missed it, and now at least they're still getting to see it pretty quickly, and it's not maybe getting spoiled for them. Some people are particular about that, like, I don't want the results spoiled, but they can see the YouTube highlights pretty quickly. And
they better stay off Twitter too.
Yeah.
Better just stay off all social media, because
Yeah.
when you're racing at this level, the results get posted awful quick.
Exactly.
So just screw it. But so that's pretty cool. So on the I'm kind of surprised it's usually only one man. I guess I don't think about it as the viewer because I am seeing different camera angles. So that's kind of like maybe I'm just simple brained and I don't think about it. But so you're doing all that at the track. How hard is that setup usually? Because I'm sure there are some tracks where it's like an easier setup for your guy that's on scene, and I'm sure some of the tracks where it's kind of older facility, a little more, I wouldn't say traditional, but just in a time where this stuff wasn't really thought of to give cameramen and a place to set up. Like, are there places that kind of come along and your guys just like, man, this is a tough place to get a good shot at?
Yeah, I mean, Jacksonville Speedway is one of those. Ross loves the place because it's where he first started shooting because he's from Illinois. But Jacksonville's kind of hard because there's no great spot as far as like a tower is concerned to go on top of the roof. So basically Jacksonville is really weird and it's kind of sketchy actually. There's like a stage on the racetrack side of the catch fence, but it's an old, that facility is an old like fairgrounds horse track. So it's way far off of the racing surface, but it's actually on the other side of the fence. It's on the racing side of the fence, not on the fan side, and it's only like 3 feet off the ground, so it kind of looks a little weird because it's the lowest you'll ever see us during any show.
Yeah.
So then you got to kind of snake your cables through the fence and stuff. But outside of that, for the most part, the hardest part is your cable run, and it's just figuring out where to go that won't get anyone hurt. And when I say get anyone hurt is you don't want anyone tripping on anything. So we make sure we have cable troughs that will cover up the cable and you'll just be able to walk right over it that way. But at the same time, just get it out of foot traffic as much as possible.
Because someone is going to find it and trip over.
Exactly.
It's like a state fair.
Yeah, exactly. Someone's going to, and if we can minimize that, that's the biggest thing. Believe it or not, one of the easiest places that at least I took part in set up this year was at Cherokee, because we were able to park our trailer right behind that wall that's right behind like the bathrooms and stuff, put our cables right over the wall and up onto our platform, and it was fantastic. And I think some people who've been to Cherokee maybe wouldn't expect it to be as simple there.
I wouldn't expect it to be that simple. I've announced there plenty of times I can't see through the window. I got to lean my head out there just to see.
Yep, but believe it or not, that one was really smooth. Eldora was really smooth because Eldora is awesome, and it's Eldora.
Yeah.
I believe the Charlotte too is fantastic, and even that's like we had 8 cameras, so that's your more one of your more intensive shows as far as setup
8
goes.
cameras, wow.
Yeah, we had 2 manned wireless cameras for that show. One person on the roof, one person in a lift in turn 1, one person inside of the track in turn 3, and 3 static cameras.
Yeah.
So five man, 3 unmanned, and between all those cable runs and everything, because you're going way up on the roof there, down to the trailer, that can get a little bit comprehensive. And honestly, tearing all that down took us 2 hours at the end of the night on Saturday. It was really quick. No, believe it or not, that was fast.
That was a fast one.
Yeah,
okay.
Believe it or not, because I've done 8 camera shoots in the past where it would take us 2 days. Not so much here, but in other places
Previous
that I've worked, where it would take us 2 days to break everything down because we had so much stuff. With us, it took 2.5 hours to break down world files, and that's probably our most comprehensive setup of the year.
How big of a heartbreaker is it when you lose a camera? Like those static ones that, like you say, are like kind of trackside to kind of give you that true appreciation of how fast they're going. They're kind of in harm's way. Have you lost a lot of cameras since just in your 50 weeks here? Or are they pretty good about positioning them where they won't get hurt?
Well, we try to position them where there's actually a chance of it happening, but we just hope that we get the shot.
Okay.
If you get the shot, everything's
It's all worth it if you get the shot.
Exactly. If you get the shot, then it is worth it.
Okay.
But we've got these really, believe it or not, the camera body itself isn't in harm's way because we've got a protective shell that goes around it and then filters that go in front of it. Usually what ends up breaking if it gets hit by a rock or something is the glass filter on the outside, and those are like $5 to replace, so it's not that bad. But as long as we get the shot, we're fine. Everything's good.
That's
That
awesome.
makes it all worth it.
So if as long as you get the shot, that it's like, hey, we did lose a camera, but I mean look what the replay we got. You got Brad Sweet going 140 going into turn 1.
Exactly. Wasn't there a time at I want to say it was Tri-County a couple years ago where you almost got hit by a piece of concrete?
Well, yeah, there was. I was manning a camera. I guess I'm trying to think what the terminology would be. The camera was on my shoulder. I was following Lenny Baticki, the pit reporter. We were on the backstretch, and I was trying to get a shot to give a little bit of perspective on the speed. Well, there's no fence on the backstretch of Tri-County. Well, a wreck happens, and I'm just on it. So I'm just like, yes, sir. And then I look, I'm like, oh, the hood's flying. Man, I got the shot. Oh no, the hood's coming at me. And Lenny Baticki, I don't know. I don't remember if he grabbed me or if he just like put his hand on me, and that was kind of my signal to back up. And now I'm looking back, it's a wonder I didn't fall down and like just destroy the camera. And I don't think my boss would have been as lenient about losing that camera. He'd have probably been a little PO'd.
But you got the shot.
But I got the daggum shot. So you got sprint cars, you got late models, you got all these different series that feed into DirtVision and stuff. And then it's really not that expensive of an option. And now you guys have opened up the Fast Pass thing. It used to be you did a sprint car Fast Pass or a late model Fast Pass. Now you can get the whole thing for, what is it now? What's the
$39 a month.
Man, that is barely anything.
Which, as you said, we opened it up from going from 2 down to 1. It used to be, as you said, a sprint car Fast Pass and a late model Fast Pass as separate things for $39 a month. Now, it's all of it for $39 a month. So basically, you're getting double the amount of content for the same price that it cost last year. And honestly, it's even more than double because we added, between Australia and the Dryden Extreme Dirt Car Series, we've added so much content, and I can't say what it is, but I know there's more coming. So there's even more content coming to DirtVision this year that'll just give you even more bang for your buck.
You sure you can't tell us? I mean, no one's listening. It's just you and me talking. Nah, I know you. I
can't tell because I haven't even been told specifics. I just know that there's more coming.
Oh, okay. Well, this is, I mean, it's got to be so much fun because you're watching an incredibly, I consider it the most entertaining form of racing just to watch. Like if I take somebody, like if my father-in-law knows ish about racing, but I felt like if I brought him over to the house to watch a sprint car or a late model race on dirt, it would at least get someone who doesn't know much about racing as far as just the pure entertainment value on your side. And also because the races are shorter, our attention spans are shorter. Mm-hmm. I don't have to hold his attention for 4 hours like other racing and stuff. So for you, is it as fun as it sounds? It sounds like a pretty fun job. I know it's not a typical 9 to 5. Your hours have to kind of play because you're working around live broadcast. So it's not like me. I work banker's hours at my job. So I know the hours are a little funny, but it just seems like a ton of fun.
It really is. I was actually, believe it or not, just having a discussion earlier today about how much fun things are. I mean, listen, there's times when a broadcast doesn't go the greatest, and you leave the studio angry because you know that you could have done better. Work is work, right? There are times when work isn't the greatest, but for the most part, it's a lot of fun. It really is. I get the privilege of getting to watch two of the most competitive series that race in America on pretty much a nightly basis. I've always enjoyed dirt late models, and being able to watch them race all the time is a ton of fun. I've enjoyed sprint cars, but I won't lie, they've always scared me just because of how dangerous they are, and we've seen in the last few years things happen. But this year I got a much greater respect for them than I ever had because I got to watch this series on a nightly basis. It was fantastic, and honestly, I probably couldn't have picked a better year to watch the Outlaws.
You picked a great year with Donnie Schatz and Brad Sweet and the points battle and David Gravel.
I mean, definitely couldn't.
You got spoiled. Now everything's going to be a letdown.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Like, I really couldn't have picked a better year to watch that series night in and night out because every single night the racing was memorable. I mean, there was even if the finish wasn't great, there was a memorable moment from every single show. And then the way it ended at World Finals this year, going into the final night, 2 points separating Donnie Schatz and Brad Sweet for the championship after 71 races. You can't ask for anything better. And just seeing what these guys do and how hard they drive, but how much finesse they have at the same time, it was just awesome. I mean, yeah, it really was a ton of fun this past year to be able to work here and see this stuff night in and night out.
So one of the parts of DirtVision is World Racing Group has a relationship with CBS Sports Network where you guys have content that goes on there. And I'm sure that's a little trickier because it's TV, so it has to fit in certain time slots and whatnot. So I'm sure the editing for that is a little bit different. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of your role in that, because you said you got to go to some shows and do that. When I stalked your Facebook page, you have two really good ones. There's you in the CBS jacket interviewing Brad Sweet, and there's one where you're interviewing Scott Bloomquist, and I am super jealous that you got to do those in person. But tell me a little bit about that experience, because it's not live, but you're getting that in-the-moment content to share to probably a bigger audience that CBS has than the rest of us have.
That was really fun. That was a new challenge, too, because believe it or not, probably doing live stuff is easier than doing tape-delayed stuff. And the reason being is if you make a mistake, you just fight through it, right? And you just hope that no one noticed. But at the same time, if you just fight through it strongly, no one really is going to notice because you're kind of just complimenting the pictures that everyone's seeing. When you're doing things tape-delayed, you obviously want to try to get it as close to perfect as possible, and then you get in your own head if you make a mistake a couple of times, and it kind of screws you up. I'd only ever done one type of broadcast like that prior to this year, and it was with Speed 51 when I was still with them on their Short Track America show on MAV TV. I did one show like that, and it was a challenge. So when my bosses told me that they wanted me to do this year, I was A, surprised, and be a little bit nervous because I've done live stuff before, but that is obviously a bit different. And honestly, I said I was surprised because when I came here, I was expecting to be in the studio every night and be pushing the buttons to make these broadcasts hopefully look as good as they can look and as smooth as they can look for the people at home. I wasn't expecting to do anything at the racetrack, let alone be a pit reporter for two of the best series in the country that you could possibly do.
And talk to high-profile drivers.
Yeah.
I mean, these are not also-rans. These are not, nothing against the guys that run on our local short tracks. I mean, these guys are professionals,
right,
driving for big-name teams. This is big time.
Donnie Schatz is one of, if not the greatest dirt racing driver in the history of the sport, right?
Oh, easily.
I mean, look at what he's done. I got to talk to him numerous times, and that was a challenge, but it was fun because Donnie's so focused, and you can tell that. Honestly, I felt like I was just being a bother, but then there were a couple times where the interview would end, and like there was one time I remember vividly at I want to say it was Williams Grove this year in October. For the first time after an interview, he stuck his hand out for a handshake, and I'm like, Man, I appreciate that, because I guess I asked a good question in that one, and you could kind of tell it as you were asking the question that his ears perked up and his eyes got wider. I'm like, okay, finally am breaking through, and that was the fun part of the challenge this year. This was way outside of my typical reporting comfort zone. As you know, seeing me at Ace Speedway all the time, I come from a pavement background. Yeah. I come from a pavement modified background in the Northeast. So doing stuff on dirt with these guys, I had no rapport with them at all, and I didn't even get to see them every single week. So I'm still kind of like a new person, and starting to build that up was fun. But then by the end of it, just at World Finals specifically, I took a couple minutes before joining in to help doing our breakdown of our video setup. Took a couple minutes to just kind of stare at the racetrack and reflect on the season and the weekend, and appreciate the fact that not only was I given this chance to do this on CBS Sports, but what transpired. In the
what
fact
you got to be a part of.
Exactly. It wasn't just I got to cover World Finals, but I got to cover World Finals, one of the most historic World Finals that we're probably ever going to see because of the championship battle that we had. And that was a real privilege, and I'm so honestly honored that I got to be asked to be a part of that. It was just a ton of fun.
That right there is probably the best example of things that I got told as a young man when I started doing this in 2010, and what I tell so many young kids now that try to get into this: soak up as much experience as you can at every stop you make, because you might need it at a future stop. Like you used that experience you had at Speed 51 to getting to do it for DirtVision, not to produce and stuff, but more, hey, Rob knows how to do those stuff, like the pit road interviews and the things like that to do for the broadcast that's taped and gets used later on CBS. I tell kids that all the time. I'm like, don't just do one thing. Learn how to do other things, because as you progress and you change jobs or you move up affiliations and you go dirt, asphalt, road racing, whatever it is, you can take something from each stop and get to apply it somewhere else, and it might help you get a job, because you're going to have to be able to do more than one thing in this business. And I know you've had to learn a bunch of things. I still got to learn I can't hardly spell my name right, but I mean, there's a lot to learn about this stuff, because there's so much of this racing that is just growing. Like with the streaming now, there's so much more option. People need people like you that can edit and things like that going forward, because now there's 10 different streaming sites out there with different kinds of racing on it. Like you said, there's a big need for people that have your skill set.
I appreciate that. I mean, I worked really hard to get to this point, and I still feel like there's still so much work left to be done and learning left to be done. And that was, again, I know, as I said before, I was having this discussion with someone before. That discussion touched on a lot of different things that I had earlier today, and it was one of those things was just continuing to learn, because otherwise, what's the point, right? Just keep learning at something every day. I mean, when I started in racing, which really wasn't that long ago, I started 2012, just covering my local short track, Riverhead Raceway on Long Island, as a writer. And that's what I went to college for, was to be basically a print journalist, and went from writing to being given the chance to do some pit reporting, or just some on-camera stuff. And then eventually I learned how to do behind-the-camera stuff, and now I can't tell you the last time I wrote a story. It's been over a year. I wrote an article on anything, because that's not what I'm doing anymore. But I mean, if I didn't have the chance to learn all those other things, I wouldn't be able to be doing this, So it just being able to learn so much is there are times when it seems frustrating, like,
oh yeah,
but it's so worth it at the same time.
Absolutely. I've gotten frustrated doing pit reporting for other streaming services and stuff, but now I have that knowledge to carry over if someone calls me up and needs like a freelance fill-in or something. You talked a little bit about where you kind of come from. You come from asphalt modified racing, which to me, just from the disciplines of racing, seems like pretty darn far away from what you make your living on working with dirt racing and stuff. And plus, y'all don't talk with southern accents like we do down here. But tell me a little bit about that background, Because, I mean, modified racing up north, you see, I don't have that perspective because I've lived in North Carolina my whole life, and modified racing outside of Bowman Gray Stadium, not very prevalent down here,
Right.
whereas up north, it seems like for you guys, it is the level. It is the main racing.
So the Northeast is really interesting because there's kind of two sects of racing in the Northeast. You have Long Island, New Jersey, and New England, well, southern New England.
Yeah, I'm about to say, we got to split that region up.
That area you would consider modified country between Riverhead Raceway on Long Island, Wall Stadium in New Jersey, and then when it's open, the Waterford Speed Bowl in Connecticut and Stafford and Thompson in Connecticut. Those are your core modified racetracks, at least in that area. Then when you start getting into Pennsylvania and New York, most of your pavement tracks in like upstate New York and Pennsylvania are also running modifieds too. But modified country really is that general area of like northern New Jersey, Long Island, and Connecticut.
Did you get to go to a lot of those as a kid, or was this more as an adult where you kind of ventured out?
More as an adult, really. My kind of growing up, my racing was, or my racing viewing, I should say, was Riverhead on occasion, maybe once or twice a year, and then mostly we would go. My dad and I would go to Dover to the Cup races until about 2003. We went to both races, and then after that, one race at Dover, and then maybe one race somewhere else. But as far as short track racing went, I didn't really start getting too deep into that until I decided to start covering it to try to help me kind of not grow the ladder. The ladder's already big enough. Make my steps up the ladder. I remember, I want to say it was 2010, I went to one of those tweet-ups, actually, at Dover with Bob Pockers and Jeff Gluck, and I got talking to Bob Pockers, and I asked him for some advice, and he's like, if you get the chance to, cover racing at your local racetrack. That's probably the best way to start off. So a couple years later, I did, and just kind of went from there. But yeah, the other thing about New England is then when you get into New Hampshire, Maine, way up there,
a little closer to Canada, yeah.
Then it goes back to super late model racing, like it is down here. So that's where the Northeast is a little bit weird. But man, the modified scene in the Northeast is just so much fun. There's so many great people, whether it's the people on the modified tour or just at the local level. Everyone's just so much fun to deal with, and just like, yeah, everyone's facing the same challenges everywhere, where it's like we're not getting paid enough purse-wise, and we're spending all this money, and you get frustrated that way. But at the same time, everyone's having fun, and everyone kind of has a real family vibe within the pit area. There are people that don't like each other, of course, but like for the most part, everyone's having fun, and it just makes it. When you come into that, it makes it a ton of fun.
I ran into that at a North-South Shootout because I got to do that race at Hickory. And just being around the pits for a couple of days, and the majority of the competitors were from north of the Mason-Dixon line, and just seeing them, because I looked at them, I tried not to look at them as out-of-towners, I just looked at them as racers, and then when you actually start talking to them, it's like the same dynamic, we just talk with a different accent. Like I was walking around, and I think I just talked to a couple people, and I got like a bag to put my stuff in, from I think it was like a Ziner Fabrications or something like that, and then the racing got going, and I mean the racing was great. It's just something that we don't really get down here in the South. So you come from the asphalt stuff. Did you go to any dirt racing as a kid?
My first dirt race was a World of Outlaws sprint car race at Orange County Fair Speedway in New York in 2013.
You are spoiled more. Some of us went to cowpoke dirt tracks where the street stocks were the feature division. Nothing against your street stocks, but you're not the World of Outlaws. But you got spoiled again.
That was my first dirt race, and I was like, you know what? I'm finally going to a dirt race. Me and a couple friends decided we were just going to go. It was a 2.5 hour drive, but it was worth it. That's the closest dirt track. Honestly, outside of Riverhead, that's the closest racetrack is 2 hours away from where I lived on Long Island. So it was like, living on Long Island, if you're not going to travel, you're really isolated to just that one track. There used to be so much more, and as the years went by, I mean, as we see all over the place, unfortunately, in short track racing, places close. But for some reason, I guess because Long Island's smaller than obviously most states are. It was just kind of hit harder in the track closing, and now we're fortunate to still just have the one at least. But outside of that, you're looking at making a couple hours drive to get anywhere pretty much to see a race. But we finally decided to do it, and it was a ton of fun. It was really an eye-opening experience seeing sprint cars in person for the first time.
Do you remember who won the race?
Yeah, it was Donnie Schatz.
Oh, there we go again. There you go.
It was Donnie Schatz, and I know Tony Stewart finished third that night. And I tell you, Tony gets a bad rap sometimes about not being the most personable person. He stood at the back of his trailer, hauler, I should say. He was definitely not using a trailer.
Yeah, about to say.
He stood at the back of his hauler for a solid hour after Victory Lane festivities were over, signing anything that anyone would bring up to him, except for a tire, because he only had a black Sharpie and it wouldn't have shown up. He asked the guy if he had a silver Sharpie. He was going to sign it. He was not going to not sign it. But that was cool that night, was just see him having fun, because you see guys doing the NASCAR thing for so long and being pulled in 1,001 directions. And that was kind of my first experience in seeing that, is like seeing a really high level of racing, but seeing that these guys are still able to have fun at the same time and still kind of do what they want to do. So that was cool.
Yeah. So now that you've been indoctrinated in all this, is there a sprint car show that if your boss said you can take this weekend off or something, now that you've been in this for a year, is there a certain show that you've seen of this year that you're like, I wish I could go see that in person? Like, is there one that came up that you watched or that you worked behind the scenes where now that you've gotten a year's worth of education in sprint car racing that you're like, man, I want to go to that. I want to go in person to see that?
Yeah, I would say it's unfortunately probably the obvious answer is the Knoxville Nationals.
I was about to say.
That one I haven't done. I was fortunate enough as part of the CBS deal here to go to the Kings Royal this year. That was incredible.
Oh, yeah.
If you've never been to the Kings Royal and you are not even a sprint car fan, not even a dirt fan, just a fan of racing, go to the Kings Royal at Eldora. It is amazing. And all I've heard is that the Knoxville Nationals is even more fun. So I would love to get to the Knoxville Nationals.
Did you get to go for the full weekend, or were you just there for the Saturday main event?
I got for Kings Royal.
Yeah, for Kings Royal.
Because
I've heard a lot of people say, yes, it's great to be there for the Saturday, but if you go for the stuff that leads up to it, it makes it just that much bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I've only had one experience with it, so I can only speak to mine, which was I did go in on Thursday, so I got to be there for the Joker's Wild and the night before the Kings Royal, and then Kings Royal Saturday. So, but it is cool in that aspect of feeling the intensity ramp up each day. And for those that don't know, Saturday technically really isn't a World of Outlaws event. It is, but it isn't. I believe it just pays show-up points. It's not a true points race. It's not affecting the championship battle, whereas Thursday and Friday do.
Yeah.
But even still, everyone, of course, once you get there, is looking towards Saturday, and especially this year with the amount of money that it paid to win. So the intensity each night is just ramping up further and further. And then as Saturday goes along, from the second you roll into the racetrack, you start feeling it, and then, okay, now the famous Eldora push trucks are rolling out to pack the racetrack. You start feeling it build a little bit more.
Goosebumps are building up a little bit.
Exactly. You start feeling it a little bit more, and then when cars push off for hot laps for the first time, it grows a little bit more, and then just with all the heat racing, and this year they had what they called the Joust. That was a ton of fun. That was a really cool event. And just as you get there, and then now it's a main time, but we're not putting cars on the racetrack yet. We're going to shut the lights off. Yeah. And everyone, turn on your cell phone flashlights. And just seeing that, actually, I'm getting goosebumps.
You're getting goosebumps now. I'm looking right at your arm.
It's just, that event was so cool to be a part of. And then this year, too, the racing was just fantastic. Logan Schuchart driving from, I want to say it was 12th to the lead in 15 laps was incredible. And then losing the lead on restart, with 10 to go to Brad Sweet. And it's like, man, you feel so bad for Logan. But then at the same time, you can't even hate on Brad because you see how excited he is when he's jumping across the victory lane stage.
That dude could have cleared 3 hurdles.
Yes.
He was so...
He probably could have dunked on an NBA net, and he's shorter than I am, and I'm 5'9".
But that is just incredible.
It was an awesome event. I've only ever experienced that at 2 other events, neither of which is the Daytona 500, believe it or not. I would say the Chili Bowl and the Snowball Derby are the only other 2 I've ever experienced that at. But the Kings Royal was incredible. And like I said, all I've ever heard is the Knoxville Nationals is even more fun. Yeah. So that is, like, I know it's the obvious choice, but that is the one event that I would really love to go to.
Sometimes it's obvious for a reason.
Yeah.
So you do a podcast on your own called The 5 Minute Clock, where you kind of, I'll say, like, give back a little bit, but you kind of focus a little bit more on the racing that you came from up in the Northeast and stuff. And so where did the idea for that come from?
So my co-host for that, his name is Richie Pillai Jr. He used to race SK Modifieds at Stafford, and he was also on the NASCAR Modified Tour for a little while. He and I became pretty good friends when we both moved down here from New York. Even though we're both from different areas, we're still both from New York, and we moved down at the same time and just became friends that way. And we just together have always had good discussions about racing and hockey, because he played, I played. He played at a much higher level, but we both played and are big hockey fans. And just our discussions that we would have, we both felt like weren't your just typical bench racing discussions or typical just we're sitting on the couch watching hockey discussions, and thought it would be fun to put a podcast together. And we both laughed at the fact that we were even discussing it, because everybody has a podcast, right?
Yeah.
We're like, are we really just gonna join into that? But then we decided, what the hell, let's do it. So we did it, and we've been having fun with it. It's between when I travel, when he travels, my race schedule, his work schedule, it's hard to do it consistently. So we're just doing it whenever we can. But it's been a lot of fun. It's been a challenge. It's actually really tested me, I feel like, as an interviewer. Because normally when I would do interviews, they're usually at longest about 10 minutes or so long, right?
Yeah, it's not that long-form conversation.
Yeah, and trying to be the word that you just used, conversational, sometimes can be a bit of a challenge. So it's been fun for me, and I've been learning through it how to be better as an interviewer. And honestly, he has no interviewing experience, no journalistic experience.
Yeah.
And I've been watching him grow as an interviewer and asking questions, and his confidence grow. He's a very confident person, and always has been, until he would sit down in that chair and we would say, all right, let's do it. Then he would kind of clam up.
Yeah.
And he's been getting so much better. It's been a ton of fun to do that project so far.
Heck yeah. You've had some pretty high-profile people. I saw Doug Coby was on one of your episodes. I got to listen to that one. I have to imagine you got Travis Braden, the guy who won the Snowball Derby after Stephen Nasse got disqualified. I have to imagine, if your podcast thing shows you listens, I have to imagine that one had to be, if not the most popular, like right up there among them. Because, I mean, that was such a high-profile news item and controversy, and Twitter might as well have broke. My Twitter might as well have broke after the disqualification happened at Snowball Derby, and Travis got the win. That one, I listened to that one like 2 or 3 times. It was just fun for me to listen. How fun was that for you to get someone who was in the middle of such a high-profile news item like Travis Braden ended up being, through no fault of his own, just because Room of Doom gets the guy who crossed the finish line first, and he gets the biggest win in asphalt racing of the year? It
was a lot of fun to do for a couple of reasons. It was a lot of fun because of the things that his answers were enlightening to me. Like, honestly, the fact that he, who just benefited from this disqualification to Stephen Nasse in the Room of Doom and benefited in a massive way, winning the Snowball Derby, the biggest asphalt race of the year, asphalt short track race of the year, we should say. For him to say, I don't know if I would disqualify someone for that, knowing that he just benefited from it, to still turn around and say, I don't know if I would have done that. Maybe what I would do is, levy a monetary fine or something, because he's like, it didn't have a performance-enhancing benefactor to it.
You wouldn't think the guy who finished second and inherited the money would say that.
Exactly. So, like, his answers were really enlightening. That was one reason why that was fun. The other reason why that was fun is because in the field that I was in with Speed 51 for about 4 years, I felt like I made a decent relationship with a lot of these people, and that one to me validated it, because I knew how busy he was. I know how busy that week is, because I've lived the same week that he lived that week, which is you have a week in Pensacola, and then immediately turn around and shoot straight back up to Indianapolis to go to PRI, and then add in what he has to deal with now, which is a lot of media requests, because he just won the biggest race of the year.
Yeah.
For him to take the time out, he was at PRI when we did it. He just found a quiet place to go to, which at PRI is hard.
That is freaking awesome.
Yeah,
kudos,
he was
Travis
at
Braden,
PRI.
if you listen to this, you are awesome for doing that.
I completely agree. Travis Braden just wins the Snowball Derby, is at PRI, and is willing to, and it's day one of PRI, which is one of the busiest days of the three.
Yeah.
Because you're just getting your feet wet there. If you've never been, PRI is
it's overcrowded.
It's overcrowded and overwhelming. It's a very overwhelming experience, especially on day one, because you're still getting your bearings straight. And then for him, walking around as now the Snowball Derby champion less than a week later, literally actually 3 days later, you're going to have a ton of people that want to talk to you there. For him to take the time to step aside and take 40 minutes to talk with myself and Richie, that was honestly a really big honor for the two of us. And like I said, for me, it just kind of validated what I felt like was the relationships and rapport that I had established with people throughout the years. It validated that for me, like, okay, I guess I do actually have that respect from people in the industry that I thought I had.
Yeah.
But it's nice to know that at times. And believe it or not, it wasn't the highest listened.
Oh, what was?
And I think it was Ryan Preece.
That's a big one.
He's a Cup driver now. So,
Yeah.
And Ryan has a pretty good social media following too. So, but again, that's another one. Like, I've had Richie from racing with and against him, and myself from covering Ryan for quite a few years. We both had a good relationship with him, but that was almost more like on a friendly, friend relationship more than just a professional one. So getting Travis was really awesome, especially the week that we did and the way we did.
It
was
awesome.
really, really fun.
So real quick, how can people listen? I love to share other people's podcasts and stuff, because people share mine too. It's, whether we're talking politics or sports or racing or, all kinds of craziness. I think it's important for us all to share stuff. So how can people find your podcast?
Yeah, I appreciate that. We are available in two places, Apple Podcasts and the Google Play Store. So if you have an Android phone, you can just download it from Google Play. If you have an iPhone, you can just go into the Apple Podcast app and search 5 Minute Clock, download it from there. We're also on Facebook. If you search 5 Minute Clock Podcast, it should come up. And we have a pretty much brand new Twitter account at 5 Minute Pod. I believe it's the number 5.
It's so hard to remember your Twitter handle for that, isn't it?
It
I forget
really
mine all
is.
the time for this podcast's Twitter handle.
It really is.
Because it's not mine, it's the podcast.
Exactly. And it's so new. It's like, man, I feel like I should have it second nature, but like it's still so new that I'm trying to remember exactly what it is. But I believe it's, I guess I could just look it up right here.
Yeah,
Actually, my
we'll give
phone's
Rob
right
a
next
second
me.
to look it up.
But I believe it's 5 Minute Pod.
We do need to figure out a time when you can do an episode on the Islanders and whatever
I'm fully game for that.
whatever the situation is with that god-awful building they make y'all play in. Because I saw that one video I think you shared on Twitter where it was like a random leak in the roof or something. And the tweet was like, what in the actual F is going on?
It wasn't even raining that day.
Like, why was it leaking?
So, yeah.
We don't have those problems at PNC Arena with the
that's
Hurricanes.
our beautiful Nassau Coliseum, where the New York Islanders split their time between there and Barclays Center in Brooklyn.
Is that place with the grass on the roof?
It does, yeah. It does have
That
grass
looks
on the roof.
weird.
Oh, it's Brooklyn. Everything about Brooklyn's weird. If
It's
you've
the
never
hipster
been,
capital of the world.
exactly.
Yeah.
The Twitter is actually at the number 5 Minute Clock Pod. So
Okay.
that is the Twitter for it. And yes, the Nassau Coliseum, where the New York Islanders play, is it's a beautiful dump.
A beautiful time.
It's beautiful in the sense that it's home, it's ours. at least for a couple more years until the new arena at Belmont Park is finished. It's also beautiful in the sense that they did just renovate it, so it's not as bad as it used to be.
Do we say renovate with the air quotes like Dr. Evil from Austin Powers?
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Basically, they put in new seats. There used to be a time when basically it was luck of the draw as to whether you would have a comfortable seat cushion or if the seat was broken and a spring might try to shoot up your butt. That was always a fun surprise. And they changed colors around, repainted it or whatever, but they didn't do too much to it. It's still the same old Nestle Coliseum that it's been since 1972. And
at least your hockey team got a 30 for 30. Even though y'all got it for a really bad reason.
But we got a 30 for 30 because we were bought by a con artist.
I'm about to say, well, you bought with the quotation mark. We could probably do a whole podcast just on the crazy history of the New York Islanders. I don't feel so bad as a Hurricane fan now, even though we stole a team from up north.
I mean, listen, Hartford, they still can't make up their mind whether they want to be part of Boston or part of New York, so I know I just made a bunch of my Connecticut friends angry with that statement, but I'll stand by it.
You know what? I'm glad they did, because I don't think I'd be a hockey fan at all if we didn't have a team. I wouldn't have like an interest in it if I didn't have a home team to pull for. So Hartford, you got that.
And honestly, that makes me as a hockey person happy. Hockey was my first love before racing. Honestly, I played it for a really long time, and it's a really fantastic sport. I know that soccer is called the beautiful game, but hockey played at a really high level is just so really honestly beautiful to watch, and being able to open other people's eyes to it in outside of your traditional hockey markets. Raleigh, North Carolina is not a traditional hockey market. Dallas, Texas is not a traditional hockey market. Places like that. South Florida. Being able to open up people's eyes and minds to this awesome game is great. And Connecticut fans, I know you miss your Hartford Whalers, and I know I would cry if the Islanders ever moved, because we came close, and I have cried about that thought. I understand losing your team, but the first generation non-Whalers fans now are probably Bruins fans to begin with. They still have a team. They still have the sport really close to them. That wouldn't have happened down here otherwise. You probably wouldn't have been a fan otherwise, as you said. So the fact that you're getting exposed to it because through the Hurricanes, which, by the way, now is a really good hockey team, it's great. And beyond the Hurricanes, hockey in North Carolina is great right now. There's 5 different professional teams in North Carolina at various levels, and all 5 are in playoff spots or made it to in playoff spots this season, or made it to the finals and won or lost in their league last season. That's incredible for a hockey program below the Mason-Dixon line.
The way I explain it to people is it's the best combination of, you'll see speed, you'll see skill, you'll see physicalness, you'll see you might see some fights. You probably won't in the playoffs, but at regular season you might see a scrap. And the scoring can happen so quick that it's never boring. But that would take up another 45 minutes.
Yeah, I could talk hockey all day.
We'll do that on the next one. I'll come back down here, we'll do another one, and we'll just do a hockey comparison, and you can laugh how I say the Russian players' names. Tavo Taravainen said with a redneck accent sounds funny.
Honestly, I love it. It's great.
But I appreciate you taking the time, brother, and everybody go over to DirtVision, pay the $39 a month, get the monthly. The per event's cool. Be smart. Get the $39 a month thing. You can watch all the World Racing Group action, and you'll never be disappointed. And if you miss a race, Rob's got the YouTube highlights up there within.
Darn right.
What's like the fastest you've gotten that? Real quick. What's like the fastest
I would say
you've gotten them up?
Within about 15 minutes.
Golly, that's fast.
I would say, but I think I only did that like once. So.
Yeah, that was a record. So it'll be there the next morning. But I appreciate it, Rob. Thank you a bunch for this.
Thank you, Tyler. I really, the fact that, listen, you came all the way down here, over an hour away to do this. I appreciate it. This was an honor for me because I've really respected you since I had the honor of crossing your path a couple years ago. And I hope this came out good because I'm not used to being interviewed. I'm usually in your seat doing the interview.
I had fun flipping the seat on this. This was fun.
I appreciate it, Tyler. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to yet another edition of the Half Price Concessions podcast. From the bottom of our hearts, We sincerely appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode or any of the episodes we've put out. Do us a favor and hit the subscribe button if you listen to this podcast on a podcast app. We're on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, Himalaya, Castro, Overcast, and Pocket Casts. So whichever app you listen to us on, hit the subscribe button. Leave us a rate and review. It helps us out a ton. It really, really does. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter at HPC Podcast, and also find us on Facebook by searching for the Half Price Concessions Podcast. You can also find all of our episodes on our website, www.anchor.fm/HPC Podcast. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you have a great day.